One of the most pleasurable memories of my childhood was playing Little League Baseball. I was a pretty good player with decent defensive skills and a fair hitter. I wasn't a power hitter, but generally I made contact and hit for average. I usually played second base as a youngster and eventually became a first baseman in my last years of playing. In the late 60s, we were living in Fairfax, Virginia, and my dad, who was a captain in United States Air Force, was stationed at the Pentagon. We lived in a little group of townhouses called Churchill Mews on Church Street off of Germantown Road. This was not far from Sidney Lanier Middle School, which I attended the last year we lived there. Next to Sidney Lanier was a vast athletic field, where we played all manner of sports, including baseball. Looking at the area on the satellite view of Google Maps shows that the field is still there, although there appears to be some construction going on. What is really astonishing is seeing all the development north of Germantown Road, where we used to explore on long treks beyond Interstate 66. We lived in Fairfax for 5 years, and most of our family are Washington Commanders football fans to this day, almost 50 years later. We had been Green Bay Packer fans while living in Wisconsin at Truax Field, but when Vince Lombardi left the Packers and became the coach of the hapless Washington team right when we moved there, it seemed natural to move with him. The Major League Baseball team we followed was our beloved Washington Senators, who exist now as the Texas Rangers. Our Washington Senators were led by slugger Frank Howard and managed by Hall of Fame legend Ted Williams. They never won the pennant and only had a couple of good years in their existence as the Senators from 1961 to 1974. The team was owned by Bob Short, and he was the one who ultimately moved the team to Texas. I still remember the last game of the Senators, which I listened to on the radio. They were actually beating the New York Yankees, but near the end of the game, the fans in the stands rioted and the game was called off. The Senators lost their last game by forfeit 1-0. One year, my dad decided to coach a Little League AAA level team, which was my age group, and enlisted his friend Richard Warwick to be his assistant coach. Mr. Warwick, as I always remember him, was a civilian employee at the Pentagon and was notable for driving a Jaguar. He was a great friend to my father and still is to this day. I remember him as nice and funny man who typically didn't treat kids much differently than adults and related to us very well. Work prevented my dad and Mr. Warwick from attending the tryouts or the draft for the league, so my dad just took me with all the players that were left over undrafted. What an astonishingly motley crew of players we were. Our team was called the Greys, and we wore some very unattractive gray and purple uniforms, as I recall. Our roster included a third baseman named Dan Huskerson who had hearing aids in both ears, but a pretty slick fielder. Several players on our team could not have been much more than 3 feet tall. One, I believe, was a general's son, and they generally rotated in right field. Our shortstop was Johnny Evans, who styled himself after legendary Senator shortstop Ed Brinkman. We also had a little whippet-like right-hander named Kurt Weitzel, who had a devastating sidearm style of pitching that rendered him almost unhittable at that level. In those years, the Senators tried many promotions to attract fans. We got many of our baseball supplies by going to Washington Senator games for Bat Day, Ball Day, Hat Day, Sunglasses Day, etc. Once we saw a doubleheader between the Senators and the Oakland A's that featured home run hitting and egg throwing contest between games. I remember the A's trio of hitters featured Reggie Jackson, and the pitchers that participated included future Hall of Famer Jim Catfish Hunter. The A's were the top American League team in those years and regularly pounded the Senators, although I do not know who that day's contests. At some point during the season, we attended a Senators game on Little League night with all the other Northern Virginia teams. Mr. Warwick got separated from the group and ended up buying us box seats, much better than the high outfield seats our friends had. The first pitch we saw was a home run by Don Buford of the Orioles off of Dick Bosman. Our team got off to a great start and won the first half of the season, which guaranteed a spot in the playoffs at the end of the year. We played a classic brand of small ball that featured smart base running, bunting, and timely hitting. This is still a classic formula in baseball. There was a definite feeling that the other teams didn't like us because they didn't respect us, and all we did was find a way to win. How did my father get us playing together as team good enough to win? Definitely, the other teams in the league had better individual players and deeper rosters. The answer lies in the mysteries of leadership. My dad had a way of getting each player focused on his individual strength and his role within the team. The relaxed way of coaching my dad employed eased the pressures of performing and encouraged the desire to really do the best for teammates. Not that there wasn't ego on the team, but that ego was nurtured within the context of the team, so that the player found his achievement for himself, but also in his contribution to the team. I have no doubt that the same style Coach Jesse Shanks used to lead the Greys utilized the same methods he used to become an outstanding and revered leader in the USAF years later. Our guys went to the plate with the desire to succeed and the preparation that made it possible. It was the tremendous coaching of my dad that utilized a classic baseball formula and groomed the components of the team to excel within it. Probably much the same way that Colonel Shanks trained and commanded his air crews on an AWACS plane later at Tinker Air Force Base. They know him as Uncle Jesse. Another important part was the sense of belonging as friends on our team, whatever the skill level. Each player felt the importance of his role on the team and shared in the victory and defeat within that role. This is such an important feature of a team, the ability to bounce back from a loss or failure as a team. I feel like I learned these lessons well, and in my own fashion can be a good leader and team member. I have practiced them in work and school situations to this very day. I remember there were some issues in the second half of the season, and we ended up not sweeping the championship. There had to be a playoff game with the winner of the second half, but I can't remember who they were. We prevailed in that game, and the Greys won the AAA championship of the Fairfax Little League in true Bad News Bears fashion, a movie which now you can see why I have had a personal enjoyment of over the years. For me personally, this was my first taste of what it was like to win the big one. I feel certain that for my teammates, it was also a very important moment for them. The simple fact is that my dad took a team that was virtually misfits and welded them into a force that not only competed, but ultimately won it all. And to this day, I am still a Washington Senators fan.